In 2004, a group of friends at college created an innovative new social media platform to connect Harvard students through an online community. 17 years later, Facebook is one of the most influential social networks in the world, boasting approximately 2.2 billion monthly users. So how did a social network created in the confines of a Harvard dorm room go from being a student trend to an unprecedented worldwide phenomenon? Let's see the answer to that in this Facebook company story. Before we continue, please subscribe to our YouTube channel by hitting the subscribe button below to get a notification on our next video. Facebook was founded by Mark Zuckerberg in 2004 as a sophomore at Harvard University. He was born on May 14, 1984, in White Plains, New York, and was raised in nearby Dobbs Ferry. He had learned from his parents and developed an interest in computer programming at an early age. At the age of 12, Zuckerberg created a messaging program named Zucknet as an inter-office communication system for his father's dental practice. Because of his early signs of success, his parents got him a computer programming tutor while he was still in high school and enrolled him in a prep school in New Hampshire. After graduating from prep school, Zuckerberg enrolled at Harvard University. Although there were many smart people at Harvard University, Mark Zuckerberg became known quickly as the go-to computer programmer on campus. He chose to major in psychology, but took plenty of computer science classes along with it. At first, the psychology choice did come off as strange. Why not major in programming or something alike? But a close look at Facebook's nature, the supposed addictive nature of the likes, comments, and pokes, the psychology choice makes more sense. Facebook gets you to share personal details and seek out interaction from other people. Being able to come up with something like this must involve some in-depth knowledge of the human mind. Zuckerberg's first big controversy was in October 2003, when he created and published FaceMash. It was a website that let Harvard students judge the attractiveness of each other to create rankings, akin to the hot or not site. Since he didn't get permission to use student photos, many were not happy with his work. Within a few hours after launch, the site had about 22,000 photo views, but after a few days, it was shut down. He was brought before the Harvard administration board with the risk of expulsion on the table. The board finally decided to let him stay after a public apology. February 2004 saw the launch of the Facebook. Though it had a slightly different name, the platform was familiar. It also had a profile where you could upload a photo, share your interests, and connect with other people. And it offered a network visualization of your connections. Originally, this was only open to people with a Harvard email address. Within the first month, over half of the college's students had signed up. But there was a big problem Zuckerberg had to deal with barely 1 week later. He was being sued. Zuckerberg had earlier worked on a similar project with fellow students Cameron Winklevoss, Tyler Winklevoss, and Divya Narendra. He eventually quit school to focus on doing his thing, the Facebook. But these ex-collaborators claim he stole their concept and ideas, and they sought a settlement. They eventually arrived at one in 2008, with each of them receiving $1.2 million shares in the Facebook company. By the IPO, these were worth $300 million. The Facebook was an instant hit and interest continued to grow. By the end of 2004, membership was open to nearly all universities in the US and Canada, and there was a steady influx of users. By June of that year, Zuckerberg moved the company's operations to Palo Alto, California, and bagged some important investment. Co-founder of PayPal, Peter Thiel, joined the board and brought with him $500,000. In May 2005, investments of $12.7 million from Excel and $1 million from the personal fortune of venture capitalist Jim Breyer were received by the Facebook. They had gotten people's attention now. In August, the was dropped from the company name, and the company officially became Facebook. The Facebook.com domain had cost $200,000. The next month, high school students were admitted along with employees of Microsoft and Apple. At this point, the company was now ready to move beyond its student niche. Zuckerberg had earlier taken the semester off from Harvard. But then in November, he announced he was leaving entirely, returning briefly to hire some new employees. After some notable investments in growing membership, Zuckerberg fully dedicated himself to running his company as a CEO, rather than a programmer. Facebook continued its expansion plans exponentially. In December, Australian and New Zealand universities were included, along with high schools from Mexico, the UK, and Ireland. There were 2,500 colleges and 25,000 high schools with access to Facebook. It wasn't until September 2006 when the platform became open for everyone over 13 with a valid email address. Facebook had now gone fully global and, by October 2007, there were 50 million registered users. In May 2007, Facebook opened its marketplace, allowing user classifieds to sell products and services. It also saw the launch of the Facebook Application Developer Platform, opening the gates for developers to create their applications and games that combined with Facebook. The platform was also looking beyond personal profiles to how businesses could benefit from the site. By the end of 2007, over 100,000 companies had signed up, with Facebook launching pages for businesses to support this. Plans were already underway to build on existing ad revenue to make advertising on the platform accessible to even the smallest businesses. April 2008 saw Facebook Chat roll out, allowing us to connect with our friends and family more instantly. The concept was not so different from Zucknet. We also see the people you may know, Facebook Wall, and Facebook Connect released in the same year. We saw one of the big Facebook games, Farmville, released in June 2009, and it became a huge success. By August it had 10 million daily active users. Meanwhile, the user count continued to grow to a whopping 350 million registered users and 132 million unique monthly users by the end of the year. It became the most popular social platform in the world. The following year came with a lot more tweaking and changes, such as the ability to like comments and improvements to photo tagging. July saw the number of registered users hit 500 million. In November 2010, Facebook was valued at a massive $41 billion. It became the third largest web company in the US, sitting just behind Google and Amazon. All of these impressively achieved in less than 5 years. Another huge milestone was reached in June 2011, when Facebook got 1 trillion page views. At the end of the year, the site was the second most visited in the United States. In August, Facebook Messenger was released as a standalone app. This came after the company acquired Beluga, a group messaging service, back in March. In April of 2012, Facebook made a major acquisition, Instagram. This was just a month before Zuckerberg was finally ready to take Facebook public. The company was valued at $104 billion, $38 a share. When all was said and done, the IPO raised a huge $161 million, but there was trouble ahead. The IPO came with accusations of improper behavior by underwriters and technical issues, while Facebook lost a quarter of its stock value in the process. The IPO was declared a fiasco by the Wall Street Journal. By June 6, investors had collectively lost $40 billion. Overall, not the smoothest of IPOs. But of course, Facebook carried on nonetheless. By October, the platform officially recorded 1 billion registered users. By 2013, a year on from the IPO, Facebook joined the Fortune 500 at number 462. There was no doubt the company was a major institution, especially its increase in global reach. February 2014 saw Facebook's 10th anniversary. An incredibly significant amount of progress since the dorm rooms of Harvard, and that was not the end. There was another major acquisition in February 2014 when Facebook announced they'd be buying WhatsApp for an incredible $19 billion. Though Facebook already had a messaging system, this acquisition provided access to WhatsApp's younger user base and their overseas users. And the following month, March, there was another major buy. This time, it was the virtual reality company, Oculus VR. In a post from Zuckerberg, he said the Oculus VR headset would enable even more useful, entertaining and personal experiences. April came with another big change. Despite owning a technically competing app, Facebook decided to remove Messenger from the main app and make it its application. This implied that people would have to download it separately to gain access. As of April 2017, Messenger gathered 1.2 billion active users. It wasn't all without some issues though. In June 2014, it was revealed Facebook had been experimenting with its users. Essentially, the platform chose to show you certain content in an attempt to influence your mood. As expected, many were not happy being tested on. After people complained, Facebook agreed to change how they conducted experiments. Still, Facebook's market capitalization continued growing, reaching $200 billion by September. Facebook announced that in the fourth quarter of 2017 they'd seen profits of $701 million, a 34% increase year-on-year. So, with the money flowing and acquisitions showing greater achievable heights, things were looking good. Until fake news gradually became more common. Social platforms, including Facebook, were being flooded with fake news stories and false information on all subjects. These were often written by sites trying to drive traffic for ad revenue or to exact some kind of political aim. Either way, the effects were not acceptable. This was an issue for Facebook, considering that the lies on their platform were advertised to millions of people. To combat that challenge, they announced a new feature allowing users to flag an article as a false news story in January 2015. If this happened enough, a note would be added for other users saying the article had been flagged as fake, while their algorithm would also factor in reports. Though it didn't exactly work, and fake news stories just became an entire concept, Facebook did not relent in trying to tackle the problem. A more positive development was the release of Facebook Reactions. This meant users could now do more than just like a post, letting us add a love, hate, haha, disgust, sad, or wow reaction as well. It indicated that Facebook was still looking at some of its original functions for improvements. July also saw an interesting statistic that half of the world's internet users used Facebook. This was after the platform released stats from the 3 months ending in June, that the site was used by 1.49 billion people. In the same month, it was found that 63% of Americans on the site got their news from the platform. This made Facebook perfect for the dissemination of misinformation. 2015 also saw the release of significant features including video calling in Messenger, the release of Facebook Live to verified public figures, and 360 video. In 2016, Facebook announced they now had 1.5 billion daily users, 3 million advertisers, and made $3.69 billion in profit in 2015. In June we saw Facebook make a change to its algorithm so that posts from your friends and families would take precedence in your feed. Great for family holiday photos, but not so good for news outlets. But then in August, Facebook sweetened the deal for publishers in the form of another algorithm change. Now, the platform would decide which stories were informative and then put them in front of people more inclined to pick an interest. Although there was the unfortunate situation of made-up news getting more traction. Because of this, Facebook announced a new platform, Workplace. Aimed at organizations, it essentially acted as an internal social platform for companies where employees could communicate with each other. Then in September, it was revealed Facebook had been publishing misleading metrics. The company was forced to apologize for miscalculating video views and the number of time users spent watching them. This was horrible for a company trying to fight the spread of disinformation on its platform. They announced plans to double down on their community reporting functionality, but also announced they'd be working with fact-checking organizations, as well as changing their advertising policies to combat ads promoting fake news. Although just tests, clearly Facebook was worried their reputation had been spoiled after a month of negative press. But, as usual, when the financial figures were released for the year, the company showed it wasn't faltering. 2016 saw them rake in over $10 billion in profits, mostly through ads, with 1.86 billion people logging in every month. Facebook continued to serve users some interesting updates, including the release of Facebook Spaces. The VR app allowed you to hang out with your friends in person. This came off the back of more immersive 360 photos and videos released earlier in the year. Unsurprisingly, the platform's user numbers and financials improved in the first quarter of 2017, earning Facebook over $3 billion in profit, a 76% increase year-on-year. Then in June, the company announced they'd reached 2 billion members. Facebook continued making tweaks and improvements to combat fake news and video clickbait. The news feed saw some slight design changes, and they improved the reporting of their clicks and impressions. Meanwhile, in December, Facebook released new tools to deal with harassment. The company promised to be more proactive in preventing unwanted contact, while allowing users to ignore messenger conversations. This came after allegations of sexual assault against the movie mogul, Harvey Weinstein, went public in October, resulting in the #MeToo campaign, which spread across the internet. In that regard, a survey that was carried out revealed that found 57% of women had faced abuse or harassment on Facebook. The company obviously had more to do. Facebook kicked off the new year 2018 with a big change, a new algorithm that made the news feed even more focused on your family and friends. This meant your statuses and photos would be seen far more, but it would be the opposite for organic reach for companies, charities, and organizations. In other words, if you run a page, you are going to get far fewer reaches unless you start paying for ads. Though it was a way to return to the original days of Facebook, before ads were commonplace, and you were just there to post photos of your escapades, people who made money running businesses on Facebook weren't entirely pleased. The first results on the change weren't positive either. Since the change, Facebook announced that people were spending 5% less time on the platform. Probably because they had to sift through less stuff they're interested in. Nevertheless, when income was the subject, Facebook was still seeing an increase. In February 2018, the financial data for 2017 was released. They took $15.90 in profits for 2017, a 56% increase from the previous year. Notwithstanding the challenges, harassment, privacy issues, and fake news, Facebook was still making money. Then, in March 2018, there was trouble for Zuckerberg and Facebook. On the 17th of March 2018, a story was released. The New York Times and The Guardian reported that data on up to 87 million users had been scraped through an app called This Is Your Digital Life. The users of this app not only passed on their personal information, but that of their Facebook friends too. As more people used the app, supposedly for a bit of fun, it soon collected a significant amount of data. Suddenly a lot of focus was on Facebook and Cambridge Analytica, and people were not pleased. There were demands for increased regulations around personal data, while there was also an increased search on Delete Facebook to show how worried people got. Around that time, Facebook also lost $70 billion off their share price, while advertisers were getting cagey and worried. Zuckerberg apologized for the issue and suspended Cambridge Analytica and a slew of apps from the platform to address the problems people raised. Cambridge Analytica ceased operations on May 1. The scandal didn't just go away, and, eventually, Zuckerberg had to testify in front of Congress and pay a $663,000 fine from the Information Commissioner's office in the UK. All of these to reassure users and advertisers. People didn't just get over it, and it increased their concerns around data. By the end of March, privacy and data worries were still obvious. This was in conjunction with worries about how Facebook might be used to influence future political events either through mined data or fake news and content. In an attempt to contain fears, Facebook announced in May that it had disabled 1.3 billion fake accounts in the 6 months leading up to March. During this time, their newsroom put out a lot of blog posts around security and privacy too, covering topics including what data Facebook collects and the information advertisers held on users. Sometime in June, a study from the Pew Research Center found that teenagers were no longer as fascinated by the platform as they once were. There was a significant drop in Facebook users between 14 to 17 switching to other platforms like Snapchat, Instagram, and YouTube. The security concerns continued relentlessly. In June, it was revealed Facebook made 14 million people's private posts public, thanks to a bug. It was also observed that Facebook had been sharing user data with Chinese companies to inform app design. In the midst of all of these, Facebook was progressing in other areas. They announced they would be funding shows from networks like ABC News and CNN that would be published by Facebook Watch, the platform's on-demand video service. They also ventured into the game streaming market with the launch of Facebook.gg. Akin to other services like Twitch, Facebook hoped to get in on the success streaming platforms were gaining. In July, there was yet another data scandal, with Facebook suspending Crimson Hexagons, a social listening company, access to their API. Though this was reinstated the following month, it served to keep concerns around Facebook and data in people's minds. On the 25th of July, the platform released its 2018 Q2 earnings report, revealing missed targets on both revenue and global daily active users. Already on the spot after the privacy and data scandals, this report alarmed the market, and Facebook saw the biggest loss of value in a single day than any other company in the history of the US stock market. In all, the company had lost around $119 billion in value, with Zuckerberg himself losing $15 billion. The report had later shown improvements, with revenue increasing by 42% and the number of daily active users up by 22 million. Then, in September of the same year, Facebook had another security issue. This time, 50 million users were exposed to a vulnerability that allowed others to take over their accounts. Notwithstanding the talks around privacy, this once again severely hit people's trust in Facebook. At the start of October 2018, Facebook made a big product announcement: Portal. Portal and the Portal Plus were video communication devices designed with home use in mind, allowing people to make video calls. Just like Amazon's Alexa voice assistant was built in, Portal was created to be set up in the home, allowing hands-free video calls, and even following callers as they moved around. And, as expected, there were immediate privacy concerns. With the recent hack, people were worried about bringing a device that could record videos of them in their homes. Though Facebook promised privacy was designed from the ground up, ensuring no recording or listening to calls, there was still the possibility of authorities receiving access to calls. They were not going to use end-to-end encryption for Portal. Also, Facebook admitted that data collected through Portal could be used to target ads. Coupled with the year's setbacks and scandals, this wasn't exactly what people wanted to hear. The devices have since gone on sale, as they were made available in November 2018. Ultimately, regardless of all the hurdles they've had to scale, Facebook continues to dominate the social media market, generating by far the most ad revenue and maintaining over half of the total market share. What do you think about the Facebook company story? With the growing influence of other social media platforms, how do you envisage Facebook's future? What do you think they can do to stay ahead? Thanks for watching this video. Please share your opinions in the comments section below, and remember to click the subscribe button to be the first person to watch new videos on this channel.